She thought she had all the power. One command, one decision. Just like always. But when she told the tired woman in scrubs to leave business class, she had no idea who she was dealing with. By the time she found out, it was too late. Because now, she's the one being escorted off the plane. What happened at 30,000 feet that turned this flight into her worst nightmare? Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. The flight attendant, Lisa Dawson, walked down the aisle with her usual sense of authority, her polished shoes tapping against the floor. She had been working for the airline for years and prided herself on keeping everything in order. As she scanned the business class cabin, checking passengers, her eyes suddenly landed on a woman sitting near the window in seat 3B. The woman, Maya Patel, was dressed in navy blue scrubs, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked exhausted, like someone who had barely gotten any sleep. Yet she sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap. Lisa's brows knitted together as she took a step closer. Something didn't feel right. "Excuse me," Lisa said, her tone sharp. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Maya looked up, blinking tiredly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her boarding pass, handing it over without hesitation. "Yes, I'm in 3B. Lisa took the ticket but barely looked at it before shaking her head. "This is business class," she repeated, a hint of disbelief in her voice. "Are you traveling alone?" Maya nodded. Lisa pursed her lips. "I think there's been a mistake. Business class is reserved for our premium passengers. I'll need to move you to economy." A few passengers nearby glanced up, sensing the tension. Some looked away quickly, while others watched with curiosity. Maya frowned slightly, confusion flickering in her tired eyes. "But I paid for this seat." Lisa let out a small, forced chuckle. "I'm sure there was some sort of mix-up. People sometimes get upgrades by accident, or maybe someone else booked it for you. But this section is meant for those who fly business class regularly." Maya's jaw tensed, but she didn't argue. After 3 straight days working back-to-back shifts in the hospital, she didn't have the energy to fight. All she wanted was a quiet flight, a meal, and a few hours of rest. Instead, she was being treated like she didn't belong. "Can you check the system?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Lisa crossed her arms. "I don't need to check. I've worked here long enough to know who belongs where. Now, if you'll follow me, I'll find you another seat." Maya hesitated. The weight of the stairs pressed on her, a silent judgment from the passengers around her. No one spoke up. No one questioned what was happening. Some shifted uncomfortably, while others pretended not to hear. She took a slow breath and gathered her bag, her fingers trembling slightly. Lisa, satisfied that she had corrected the mistake, turned and led her down the aisle to the economy section. The seats were smaller, tighter, and already filled with passengers who barely spared them a glance. Lisa gestured toward an empty seat near the back. "This one is available," she said briskly. "Please take it so we can continue boarding." Maya sat down without a word. She placed her bag under the seat in front of her and stared out the window, her chest tightening with frustration. She had done nothing wrong, yet she had been treated as if she had stolen the seat. She pulled out her phone and typed a short message. "Maya, they moved me, said I couldn't sit in business class." A few seconds passed. Then a reply came through. "Aiden Patel. What do you mean they moved you? Who moved you?" Maya exhaled slowly, keeping her expression blank even as she typed back. "Maya, the flight attendant. She didn't believe I had a real ticket." There was a long pause, then another message. "Aiden. What's the flight number?" Maya quickly checked her boarding pass and sent him the details. The reply came just seconds later. "Aiden. Stay where you are." Maya locked her phone and placed it in her lap, staring out the window. Her mind was racing, but she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Maya sat in her cramped economy seat, her heart still pounding from the humiliation she had just endured. The soft hum of the airplane filled the cabin, but her mind was too busy replaying the scene over and over. She had worked tirelessly in the hospital for days, barely getting any rest, only to be treated like an intruder in the section she had rightfully paid for. She clenched her hands in her lap, trying to keep her breathing steady. She had learned long ago not to react emotionally in moments like this. Stay calm, observe, and let the truth come to light. That was something her brother Aiden had always told her. Her phone vibrated again. Aiden. What's the flight attendant's name? Maya quickly looked toward the front of the plane. Lisa stood there, still attending to business class passengers as if nothing had happened. She moved with the same stiff posture, her head held high, completely unaware of the mistake she had just made. Maya typed back. Maya. Lisa Dawson. Another reply came within seconds. Aiden. Got it. Don't do anything. Just wait. She exhaled, leaning back against her seat. That was the thing about Aiden. He never reacted impulsively. He was always in control, always 3 steps ahead. And when he said wait, it meant something big was coming. Up at the front of the plane, Lisa continued her work, checking tickets, smiling at well-dressed business class passengers, and offering drinks that she had never offered Maya. She didn't think about the nurse she had just escorted to the back. In her mind, it was just another small correction, another day of keeping things in order. But then something changed. The intercom crackled to life, and the captain's steady voice filled the cabin. Ms. Dawson, please report to the cockpit immediately. Lisa froze, her smile slipping for the first time. Some of the passengers looked up, sensing that something was off. She turned to one of the other flight attendants, Hannah, who had been watching everything unfold from the sidelines. Did the captain say my name? Lisa asked, her voice quieter now. Hannah nodded slowly. Yes. You should probably go. Lisa straightened her uniform, swallowing the uneasy feeling rising in her chest. She had never been called to the cockpit mid-flight before. But she pushed the thought aside and walked toward the front, still confident that whatever it was, she could handle it. What she didn't know was that her entire world was about to turn upside down. Lisa walked briskly toward the cockpit, trying to keep her expression neutral. She didn't like surprises, and being called to the front of the plane like this, something felt off. As she reached the cockpit door, the first officer, Captain Hughes, stood just inside, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Beside him, the in-flight phone was still active, a video call displayed on the small screen. Lisa could see a sharply dressed man on the other end. His posture was stiff, his eyes cold. Ms. Dawson, the captain said, his voice steady, we have a situation. Lisa forced a polite smile. Of course, Captain. Is there an issue I need to assist with? The man on the video screen leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Ms. Dawson, my name is Aiden Patel. I am the majority shareholder of this airline. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. A shareholder? She opened her mouth to respond, but he didn't give her the chance. I just received a report that a business class passenger, Dr. Maya Patel, was removed from her paid seat and forced into economy. By you. His words were slow, deliberate. Would you like to explain why? Lisa's breath caught in her throat. Maya Patel? She replayed the interaction in her head, suddenly realizing why the name sounded familiar. Her pulse quickened. She was in the wrong seat, Lisa said quickly, straightening her posture. I followed protocol. Business class is for premium passengers, and she is a premium passenger, Aiden cut in. Not only did she pay for that seat, but she's also a partner in our medical division, which has an ongoing contract with this airline. Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. Aiden's voice grew colder. Let me be very clear, Ms. Dawson. You didn't just humiliate a random passenger. You removed a top medical professional from the seat she rightfully paid for in front of a cabin full of people. You made an assumption without checking the system, without verifying the manifest, and now, he paused, his eyes sharp. You are responsible for this disaster. Lisa's hands clenched at her sides. This couldn't be happening. She had dealt with difficult passengers before, but this was different. This was powerful people, powerful consequences. The captain cleared his throat. We have received a direct order from Mr. Patel. Effective immediately, you will personally escort Dr. Patel back to business class and issue a formal apology. Lisa's body went stiff. She had never in all her years of service been forced to apologize to a passenger. But the look she was getting from both men told her there was no room for negotiation. Aiden Patel wasn't done yet. And when this flight lands, You will be reporting to the executive board for a full review. If I don't like what I hear, he exhaled sharply, consider your career over. Lisa swallowed hard. This wasn't just a simple mistake anymore. This was her entire future on the line. Captain Hughes gestured toward the cabin door. Now, Ms. Dawson, fix your mistake. Lisa forced herself to nod. She turned and walked out of the cockpit, her legs feeling unsteady for the first time in years. This was no longer her flight to control, and for the first time she had no idea what was going to happen next. Lisa stepped out of the cockpit, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were clammy, her once pristine uniform suddenly feeling too tight, like it was suffocating her. She had spent years commanding respect in the air, making sure passengers knew their place, and now she was the one being ordered around. She took a slow breath, steeling herself as she made her way back through the business class cabin. She could feel the stares. Passengers who had barely noticed her before were now watching her closely, sensing the shift in power. Some exchanged quick glances, while others pretended to be lost in their screens, but no one was fooled. Her steps felt heavier as she approached economy, where Maya Patel still sat by the window, looking out at the sky. She didn't seem angry. She didn't even seem surprised. She was just waiting. Lisa hesitated for half a second, then forced her expression into something neutral, something professional. Her voice was quieter this time, no longer carrying the same edge of authority. Dr. Patel, she said, careful to say the title she had ignored before. There's been a misunderstanding. Maya finally turned to face her. She didn't say anything right away, just studied Lisa, her gaze steady and unreadable. A misunderstanding? She repeated, her voice calm. Lisa nodded stiffly. Yes, I'd like to escort you back to your original seat in business class. The words tasted bitter. Having to correct herself, having to admit she was wrong, this was a foreign feeling. She had spent years making quick decisions, expecting no one to question her. But now she was being questioned without a single word. Maya didn't move. She didn't even reach for her bag. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. I had my ticket, she said evenly. You saw it, and you still told me to move. Lisa's stomach twisted. A few passengers nearby shifted in their seats, pretending to look at their phones but clearly listening. She swallowed. Choose your words carefully. I may have made an error in judgment, Lisa said, her voice lower now. Maya blinked, waiting. Lisa exhaled, forcing herself to say it. I misjudged you. There it was, the thing Lisa had spent years avoiding, admitting fault. Maya nodded once, then finally stood up. She reached for her bag, her movements slow, deliberate. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't flustered. She was in control now, and she knew it. As Maya stepped into the aisle, Lisa turned, walking ahead of her toward the front of the plane. But this time, she didn't walk with the same stiff confidence she usually carried. This time her steps were uncertain, because now she was walking straight into the biggest humiliation of her career. Maya followed Lisa through the narrow aisle, feeling the shift in energy around her. Passengers in the economy section who had seen what happened earlier watched in silence, their expressions ranging from curiosity to quiet satisfaction. Some even exchanged knowing glances, as if silently acknowledging that justice was being served. Lisa, however, kept her gaze straight ahead, her movements stiff. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy stone on her shoulders. She wasn't in control anymore. And the worst part, she knew it. As they entered the business class section, the atmosphere was completely different. Plush leather seats, extra legroom, and the hum of soft conversation filled the space. It was a world apart from the crowded economy seats where she had just forced Maya to sit. Passengers in business class, who had chosen to ignore the earlier confrontation, suddenly pretended to be engrossed in their magazines, tablets, or drinks. But Maya could see it, the way their eyes flickered toward her, the way some of them sat up just a little straighter now that they realized she was supposed to be here all along. Lisa stopped at seat 3B, then turned, her expression unreadable. Here you are, she said stiffly, stepping aside. Maya set her bag down and slowly, deliberately took her seat again. The same one she had been forced out of just moments ago. The same one she had every right to be in. She buckled her seatbelt, adjusted the armrest, then turned her head slightly toward Lisa, waiting. Lisa's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She knew what was coming. She took a deep breath, forcing her voice to stay even. I apologize for the misunderstanding. The words barely made it past her lips, but she said them. A few passengers glanced up. One even raised an eyebrow, as if silently acknowledging how forced it sounded. Maya gave a small nod, but she wasn't done. A misunderstanding, she repeated softly. That's what you're calling it? Lisa stiffened. You didn't question anyone else's ticket, Maya said, her voice calm but firm. Just mine. Silence. Lisa's throat felt dry. She couldn't deny it. She had made a decision based on an assumption, one that had backfired in the worst possible way. Maya tilted her head. So tell me, what exactly was the misunderstanding? Lisa couldn't answer. The air felt heavy between them, the tension stretching long enough that even the passengers, who were pretending not to listen, couldn't ignore it anymore. Lisa exhaled sharply. I made a mistake, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya studied her for a moment longer before finally turning away, ending the conversation without another word. That was worse than anything Lisa had expected. No anger, no yelling, just quiet, undeniable truth. Lisa swallowed hard and took a step back. She turned quickly, walking away as fast as she could without making it obvious. She just wanted to disappear. As she retreated toward the front of the cabin, the reality of the situation finally sank in. She hadn't just embarrassed herself in front of passengers. She had humiliated herself in front of the wrong person. And now, she had no idea what would happen next. Lisa walked swiftly toward the galley, her pulse hammering in her ears. Her hands trembled as she reached for a tray, pretending to busy herself with arranging glasses. She needed a moment to breathe, a moment to think. But no amount of deep breaths could change what had just happened. She had been forced to apologize, not in a private conversation, not in a controlled setting, but in front of an entire business-class cabin. And the worst part? She knew everyone had been listening. A soft voice broke through her thoughts. You really messed up this time. Lisa turned sharply. Hannah, the younger flight attendant, who had been watching everything unfold, stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Lisa clenched her jaw. I don't need a lecture right now. Hannah shrugged. I'm not lecturing. I'm just wondering how you're going to fix this when we land. Lisa stiffened. Fix this? There was no fixing it. Hannah took a step closer. You think you've handled difficult passengers before, right? But this isn't just about a passenger, Lisa. You didn't just move the wrong person. You moved the owner's sister. Lisa's stomach twisted violently. Owner's sister. She already knew Aiden Patel was a major shareholder in the airline, but she had been so focused on damage control that she hadn't processed what that meant. Maya Patel wasn't just a doctor. She was family. Hannah leaned in slightly. You think Aiden Patel is going to let this go? She let the question linger before shaking her head. You've worked here long enough to know how this works. People don't get away with things like this when it involves the people at the top. Lisa's breathing was shallow now. The realization was hitting her all at once. She had not only insulted a paying passenger, she had humiliated the sister of the airline's most powerful man. And Aiden Patel? He wasn't the type to forget things. Lisa gripped the counter, trying to steady herself. Her thoughts raced. Was there anything she could do? Could she fix this before the plane landed? Hannah watched her closely, her gaze sharp. Then after a beat, she said something that made Lisa's blood run cold. You might want to start thinking about what your next job is going to be. Lisa couldn't breathe. She had been a flight attendant for over 10 years. She had built her reputation on knowing how to handle passengers, how to keep things in order, how to make quick decisions. But this wasn't just a bad decision. This was the kind of mistake that ended careers, and hers might be over before the wheels even touched the runway. Lisa's grip tightened around the tray as the weight of her mistake settled deeper into her chest. Her career had always been about control, controlling the passengers, controlling the seating, controlling every situation before it spiraled. But now, for the first time, she had lost control completely. A sharp buzz echoed through the cabin. The in-flight phone in the galley lit up, the small screen flashing with an incoming call. Lisa's stomach dropped. She already knew who it was. She hesitated for half a second before forcing herself to lift the receiver. Her hand felt unsteady as she pressed it to her ear. "This is Lisa," she said, keeping her voice professional, despite the unease twisting in her gut. A pause. Then a deep, steady voice filled the line. "This is Aiden Patel." Lisa swallowed hard. His tone wasn't raised. He didn't sound angry. But there was something in the way he spoke that made the air feel too heavy, too sharp. "I assume by now you understand the severity of what you've done," he said. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Aiden didn't wait for an answer. "I gave you a direct order. You escorted my sister back to business class. You gave her a weak excuse for an apology." A pause. Then his voice hardened. "But do you really think that's enough?" Lisa's throat was dry. I was just following protocol." Aiden let out a slow exhale, but it wasn't out of frustration. It was the kind of measured silence that made it clear he was deciding how bad this was going to be for her. "Tell me, Ms. Dawson," he said. "When you looked at her, what did you see?" Lisa froze. The question hit her harder than she expected. "You assumed she didn't belong in business class," Aiden continued. "You assumed without checking the system, without verifying the manifest. You saw a woman in scrubs, tired from work, and decided she was in the wrong place." Lisa's fingers curled around the phone. "I made a mistake. You made a choice." The words sent a cold chill down her spine. There was another silence, longer this time. The weight of it pressed against Lisa's chest. "I want you to listen carefully," Aiden finally said, "because this will determine what happens to you when we land." Lisa squeezed her eyes shut, already dreading what was coming next. "From now until the moment this plane touches the ground, you will personally ensure that Maya receives the exact service every other business class passenger gets. You will not ignore her. You will not disappear. You will do your job the way you should have from the start." Lisa nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Yes, sir." "And when we land," Aiden added, his tone like ice, "you will report directly to the airline's executive board. There will be no excuses, no explanations. You will account for every decision you made today." Lisa's breath hitched. She had been holding on to some hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be smoothed over. But Aiden Patel had just made it clear that this wasn't going away. The call ended with a soft click. Lisa lowered the receiver slowly, staring at nothing, her mind blank. Her legs felt like they weren't even holding her up anymore. Because now, she knew for certain, this flight was going to be the longest of her life. Lisa remained frozen in the galley, gripping the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. The weight of Aiden Patel's words settled deep in her chest, suffocating her. She had spent years handling difficult passengers, enforcing rules, maintaining order. But this wasn't something she could control. The walls of the aircraft suddenly felt smaller, tighter. She had no escape. She had to walk back into that cabin, continue working, continue smiling, knowing that everyone had witnessed her failure. And worse, knowing she was being watched. Hannah was still standing a few feet away, arms crossed. She didn't say anything, but Lisa could feel her silent judgment. Lisa exhaled sharply, straightened her uniform, and forced herself to move, one foot in front of the other. That's all she needed to focus on. As she stepped back into the business class cabin, she could feel the shift. The moment she reappeared, passengers subtly glanced at her, their expressions ranging from curiosity to quiet disapproval. They weren't just looking at her now. They were evaluating her. For years, Lisa had been the one in control, the one passengers feared when they tried to break the rules. Now, for the first time, she was the one under scrutiny. She forced a small, professional smile and moved toward the first-class service cart. Her hands were still unsteady as she reached for a bottle of sparkling water, double-checking the label for the first time in her career. She couldn't afford another mistake. With careful steps, she made her way to seat 3B. Maya was sitting comfortably now, flipping through the in-flight magazine. Completely calm. If she was still upset, she didn't show it. She didn't need to. Her presence alone carried enough weight. Lisa swallowed back the discomfort pressing in her throat and gently placed the drink on Maya's tray table. "Here's your sparkling water, doctor." Patel, she said, her voice quieter than usual. Maya didn't look up right away. She turned a page in her magazine, then finally glanced at Lisa, her expression unreadable. Lisa forced herself to hold eye contact, though it was much harder now than before. "Can I get you anything else?" Lisa asked, her voice too tight, too forced. Maya took a slow sip of the drink, then set it down. "You didn't ask me that before." Lisa blinked. "Excuse me?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "When I first sat down, you didn't offer me anything. You didn't even greet me properly, like you did with the other passengers." Lisa felt a rush of heat crawl up her neck. She knew exactly what Maya was doing, and she deserved every second of it. I apologize for that," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya studied her for a moment longer, then nodded once. "I'll have a hot tea." Lisa nodded too quickly in turn, practically rushing back to the galley. She could hear the murmur of low conversations behind her, the quiet shift of energy as passengers exchanged glances. They were still watching. She prepared the tea carefully, too carefully, making sure everything was perfect. When she returned, Maya took it without a word and continued reading. Lisa lingered for a moment, waiting. For what, she didn't know. Maybe some sort of acknowledgement that this was over. Maybe a signal that she could breathe again. But Maya didn't spare her another glance. And somehow that felt worse than anything Lisa had imagined. As she turned to walk away, Lisa felt her stomach twist. The rest of the flight stretched ahead of her like a punishment she couldn't escape. Because she knew this wasn't just about one moment. This was about what would happen when they landed, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Lisa moved back to the galley, gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Her hands were still shaking. She had spent the last 10 years keeping passengers in line, making sure everything ran smoothly, ensuring rules were followed. But now, she was the one losing control. She glanced at the clock above the service station. 2 more hours until landing. 2 more hours of feeling the weight of every glance, every whisper, every lingering stare from passengers who had witnessed what happened. 2 more hours of knowing that the moment the plane touched the ground, she would have to answer for everything. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to push away the anxiety creeping up her spine. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had handled difficult situations before. She had faced upset passengers, last-minute policy changes, high-profile clients. But she had never faced something like this. Taking a deep breath, she straightened up and forced herself to go through the motions. Refill the drink cart. Check the meal orders. Keep moving. If she could just focus on doing her job, maybe the time would pass faster. But she could feel it. The tension in the air was thick. And then the final blow came. The in-flight phone buzzed again. Lisa's stomach dropped. She knew before she even picked it up that it wasn't good. Slowly she reached for the receiver and lifted it to her ear. "This is Lisa," she said, keeping her voice steady. The voice on the other end was low, firm, and absolute. "Ms. Dawson, this is James Connors, Senior Operations Manager. We need to have a conversation." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. The Senior Operations Manager. This wasn't just a routine disciplinary call. This was serious. She swallowed hard, her grip tightening around the phone. "Of course, Mr. Connors. What can I do for you?" A pause. Then his voice came through, calm, but carrying a weight that made her knees feel weak. "You will be escorted off the aircraft as soon as we land." Lisa stopped breathing. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mr. Connors continued, his tone unwavering. "Upon arrival, you will report directly to an executive hearing to discuss your conduct on this flight. Do you understand?" Lisa's breath hitched. An executive hearing. This wasn't just a warning. This was a career-ending moment. She forced herself to respond. Yes, I understand." "Good." Then just before the call ended, Mr. Connors added one last thing. "You should prepare yourself, Ms. Dawson, because you will be answering directly to Mr. Patel." The line went dead. Lisa slowly lowered the receiver, her hand trembling so badly that she nearly dropped it. Passengers laughed quietly in the background. Flight attendants moved up and down the aisles. The aircraft hummed softly as it soared through the sky. But Lisa couldn't hear any of it. All she could hear was the sound of her career slipping through her fingers. She had been so sure she was untouchable. And now, she was about to find out exactly how wrong she was. Lisa stood motionless in the galley, the cold realization settling deep into her bones. Escorted off the aircraft. Executive hearing. Answering directly to Aiden Patel. The words replayed in her mind like a broken record, each repetition sending another sharp pang of dread through her chest. This wasn't a simple disciplinary meeting. This was a reckoning. For the first time in her entire career, she had no way out. Her legs felt unsteady as she turned, pressing both palms against the cool metal counter in front of her. She tried to slow her breathing, tried to think, but the anxiety curling in her stomach made it impossible. The worst part? She had done this to herself. She had been so sure, so absolutely convinced that Maya Patel hadn't belonged in business class. She hadn't even considered checking the system. She hadn't questioned her assumption. And now, she had humiliated the sister of one of the most powerful men in the airline industry. She could already picture it. The moment the plane landed, the moment security would be waiting for her at the jet bridge. She would be led off like some rule-breaking passenger she had once been so quick to dismiss. Passengers would see, her crew would see. She would be a public example of what happens when someone in power makes the wrong decision. Lisa's stomach turned violently. This was worse than being fired. This was public humiliation on a level she had never experienced before. And it wasn't over yet. A shadow loomed over her, and she turned, expecting another scolding from Hannah. But it wasn't Hannah. It was Maya. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected Maya to come to her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lisa looked at Maya, who stood there with an air of quiet authority. She wasn't smug. She wasn't gloating. She didn't need to. She already knew the damage had been done. Finally, Maya spoke. "I assume you got the call." Lisa swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. "Yes." Maya studied her for a moment before exhaling softly. "I don't enjoy seeing people lose their jobs," she said, "but I do believe in accountability." Lisa's throat tightened. Maya continued, her voice level. "What do you think is going to happen when we land?" Lisa hesitated. She already knew the answer. I'll be facing an executive review," she admitted. Maya tilted her head slightly. "And then what?" Lisa struggled to find words. She wanted to say something, anything, that would lessen the weight of this conversation. But there was no excuse she could give. No justification that would make this better. "I don't know," Lisa finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya let the silence linger between them before speaking again. "Let me ask you something, Ms. Dawson." Lisa flinched at the use of her name. It felt strange now, hearing it spoken by the woman she had wronged. "When you told me to move, what was going through your mind?" Maya asked. "Did you even stop to think about whether I belonged here? Or did you just assume?" Lisa's chest tightened. She wanted to defend herself. She wanted to say that she was just doing her job, that she was following protocol, that she had made a simple mistake. But she couldn't, because Maya already knew the truth. Lisa had looked at her scrubs, her tired face, and made a judgment before even verifying the facts. Maya didn't need her to say it out loud. She already knew. Lisa let out a slow, shaky breath. "I made an assumption." Maya gave a small nod, as if she had expected that answer. "And do you understand now why that was wrong?" Lisa felt heat rise to her cheeks. This conversation wasn't just uncomfortable. It was devastating. She had spent her entire career acting as if she knew better than passengers, as if she was always right. Now she was being forced to admit, out loud, to the very person she had disrespected, that she was wrong. She swallowed. "Yes." Maya studied her for a moment longer, then finally nodded. "Good." She didn't say anything else. She simply turned and walked away, back toward her seat in business class, where she had belonged all along. Lisa stood there, feeling something unfamiliar clawing at her chest. This wasn't just fear of losing her job. This was something worse. This was the realization that her mistake wasn't just about company policy. It was about something deeper, something uglier. And now, she had to live with it. Lisa remained in the galley long after Maya returned to her seat. Her hands were still gripping the counter, her breath coming out in slow, shallow bursts. The weight of what had just happened settled deeper into her chest, making it harder to breathe. For the first time in her career, she wasn't just afraid of losing her job. She was afraid of what losing her job would mean. It wasn't just about a paycheck, about the years she had spent climbing the ranks, about the uniform she had once worn with pride. It was about who she had been while she was in that uniform. And now, standing here in the quiet galley, she had to ask herself a question she had never asked before. Had she been the kind of person who deserved the power she had? Her chest felt tight. She had built her career on certainty, certainty that she was in the right, that she could enforce the rules without question, that passengers needed her to keep everything in order. But now, she wasn't certain of anything anymore. A voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Ms. Dawson." Lisa flinched, turning quickly. Hannah stood there, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Lisa wasn't in the mood for another lecture. She had already been dragged through enough in the last few hours. But Hannah didn't say anything for a long moment. She just studied Lisa carefully, as if deciding whether or not it was even worth speaking to her. Finally, she sighed. "You know, when I first started working with you, I thought you were one of the best flight attendants on staff." Lisa frowned, caught off guard. "What?" Hannah shrugged. "You always seemed so confident, like you knew exactly how to handle every situation. You made quick decisions and you never let passengers push you around." She hesitated. I admired that in a way. Lisa's throat tightened. This wasn't where she had expected this conversation to go. "But now," Hannah continued, "now I see that confidence wasn't always a good thing." Lisa felt her stomach twist. "What do you mean?" Hannah sighed, leaning against the counter. "You didn't second-guess yourself when you told Dr. Patel to move. Not even for a second. That's not confidence, Lisa. That's arrogance." Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because Hannah was right. She hadn't questioned herself. Not once. Not even when Maya had shown her the ticket. Not even when she had asked her to check the system. Lisa had already made up her mind before she even spoke to her. And now she was paying the price for it. Hannah tilted her head slightly. "I guess the real question is, do you even know why you did it?" Lisa stiffened. She wanted to have an answer. She wanted to say it had been a simple mistake, that she had been tired, that she had been trying to do her job. But the truth was much worse. She had looked at Maya, at her scrubs, at her tired face, at the way she had sat quietly in her seat, not exuding the usual arrogance of the high-status business-class passengers, and she had assumed. She had assumed Maya didn't belong, and she hadn't even realized she was doing it. The realization hit her like a blow to the chest. Hannah must have seen it on her face because she gave a small nod. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Lisa looked away, unable to meet Hannah's eyes. A long silence stretched between them. Then Hannah spoke again. "You know, if this was just about a bad decision, I think Mr. Patel would have let it slide." Lisa's head snapped up. "What?" Hannah shrugged. "Rich people don't usually get involved in things like this unless they have to. If it was just about moving a passenger, you might have gotten a slap on the wrist, maybe a suspension. But an executive hearing?" She let out a soft breath. "That means this isn't just about one bad call, Lisa. It's about something bigger than that." Lisa's pulse quickened. Something bigger. Her stomach turned violently. Because Hannah was right. This wasn't just about one incident. This was about what it represented. Maya Patel had been lucky. She had connections. She had a brother who was powerful enough to make sure justice was served. But how many times had Lisa made similar judgments in the past? How many passengers had she subtly treated differently without even realizing it? How many times had she made someone feel like they didn't belong, without facing a single consequence? Her breath came shorter now. This wasn't just about today. This was about years of unchecked power. Lisa felt sick. She turned back toward the galley counter, bracing herself against it as the reality of it all came crashing down. She had spent a decade building herself up, and in a single flight, she had torn herself down. Hannah shifted beside her. "I guess the only thing left to ask is, if you had a chance to fix this, would you?" Lisa swallowed hard. Would she? Could she? She wasn't sure anymore. But what she did know was that when this flight landed, she wouldn't just be fighting for her job. She would be fighting for who she was going to be moving forward. And for the first time in a long, long time, she wasn't sure she liked who she had been before. Lisa had never felt time move so slowly. The hum of the engines, the soft murmur of passengers, the distant sound of ice clinking in glasses. It all blended together into a muffled buzz that seemed disconnected from the storm raging inside her. Her mind wouldn't stop racing. Everything Hannah had said, everything Maya had forced her to confront, every moment of this flight had peeled away layers of confidence she once wore like armor. And now she was exposed. The worst part, she had no one to blame but herself. She glanced toward the business class section, where Maya sat sipping her tea. She wasn't speaking to anyone, wasn't making a scene. She had won this battle without raising her voice, without demanding attention, without asking for revenge. That made it even worse. Lisa had dealt with entitled passengers before. Loud ones, aggressive ones, people who thought money or status made them immune to rules. She had put them in their place without hesitation, never losing sleep over it. But Maya Patel hadn't been entitled. She hadn't demanded anything. She had simply existed, and Lisa had still assumed she didn't belong. A fresh wave of nausea curled in her stomach. This was different. This wasn't about a seat. It was about power. And for once, Lisa wasn't the one holding it. She turned away, focusing on the service cart, pretending to be busy, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then, another voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Excuse me." Lisa flinched slightly before turning. A businessman in his mid-50s, Mr. Bennett, sat near the aisle, watching her with a raised brow. He had a distinguished air about him, the kind of calm arrogance that came with money. "I was wondering if I could get another whiskey," he said, swirling the half-melted ice in his glass. Lisa nodded quickly. "Of course, sir." She poured the drink carefully, focusing on keeping her hands steady as she set the glass back down. Mr. Bennett took a sip, then exhaled slowly. "Quite the show back there." Lisa stiffened. He wasn't talking about the whiskey. She forced a polite smile, even though her stomach dropped. "I'm sorry?" Mr. Bennett leaned back in his seat, regarding her with mild curiosity. "That whole ordeal with the doctor, I was watching." He paused, then added, "So was everyone else." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. She had known people had been watching. She had felt their stares, their judgment. But hearing it confirmed made her stomach twist. Mr. Bennett took another slow sip. "You know, I've flown on this airline for years, seen a lot of things. But I have to say," he let out a small chuckle, shaking his head, "I've never seen a flight attendant forced to walk someone back to their seat like that." Lisa swallowed hard, keeping her expression neutral. "Must have been humiliating," he mused. She gritted her teeth. It was, but she wasn't about to confirm that. Instead, she forced out a small, professional laugh. "I was just following orders." Mr. Bennett smirked. "Sure you were." Lisa's pulse pounded. "Thing is," he continued, swirling his glass, "you made a bad call, and now you're going to pay for it." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "The real question is, how bad do you think it's going to be?" Lisa clenched her jaw. "Excuse me?" He gestured toward Maya with his drink. "That woman has power. Her brother has more. And you? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if this is your last flight in that uniform." Lisa's hands trembled at her sides. Mr. Bennett chuckled again. "That's how it works, isn't it? People like them make the rules. People like you enforce them. And when it all goes wrong," he smirked, "someone has to take the fall." Lisa couldn't breathe. Because he was right. She had been enforcing someone else's unspoken rules. Rules that told her who belonged and who didn't. And when those rules turned out to be wrong, she was the one paying the price. The thought made her stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with fear of losing her job. She had spent years following this system, believing in it, upholding it, and now it was swallowing her whole. She turned away abruptly, mumbling, "Excuse me," before practically fleeing toward the galley. She needed to be alone. She needed to think. Because now, for the first time, she wasn't just questioning what was going to happen when they landed. She was questioning everything. Lisa gripped the counter in the galley, her breath coming in uneven waves. Her mind wouldn't stop racing. Mr. Bennett's words clawed at her like invisible hands tightening around her throat. People like them make the rules. People like you enforce them. And when it all goes wrong, someone has to take the fall. Her stomach twisted. He was right. She had spent years believing she was the one in control, that her authority was absolute, that she knew who belonged and who didn't. But now, she wasn't in control at all. She was just a piece in a bigger system, a system that had taught her to make assumptions without question, to enforce invisible rules that had never been written down but had always been understood. Rules that had led her to humiliate the wrong passenger. But what about before this? What about all the other times she had acted the same way? When there wasn't someone powerful watching? The thought made her sick. She had never questioned herself before, not when she had given extra attention to a well-dressed businessman over someone who looked like they had saved up for their ticket. Not when she had instinctively assumed a younger passenger in economy was trying to sneak into a better seat. Not when she had looked at Maya Patel and decided without even thinking that she didn't belong. If Maya had been wearing a designer suit instead of scrubs, would I have treated her the same way? The question hit her like a gut punch. No, she wouldn't have. Lisa squeezed her eyes shut, her fingers gripping the cold metal counter so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The realization burned. For years, she had thought of herself as someone who followed the rules, who upheld order. But now she had to wonder, was she really enforcing rules, or had she just been enforcing her own assumptions? She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as her pulse pounded in her ears. She felt exposed, like someone had ripped away every lie she had told herself, every justification, and forced her to look at herself clearly for the first time. And she didn't like what she saw. Lisa had always believed she was firm but fair, that her authority wasn't biased, that she was simply doing her job. But if that was true, then why was she standing here trembling, knowing deep down that she had done something much worse than making a bad call? She had looked at another human being and decided based on nothing but her own subconscious prejudices that they didn't belong. And now she was about to lose everything because of it. She wiped at her forehead, suddenly feeling hot, even though the galley was cool. The in-flight phone buzzed again. Her stomach dropped. She didn't want to answer it, didn't want to hear one more voice reminding her of the career she was about to lose. But she forced herself to pick it up, her fingers trembling. "This is Lisa," she said, her voice hoarse. A calm but firm voice responded. "This is Captain Hughes." Lisa stiffened. "You should prepare for landing," the captain continued. "We've received final confirmation from the airline board. Upon arrival, security will be escorting you off the aircraft." Lisa's mouth went dry. This was it. It wasn't a warning anymore. It wasn't just a possibility. It was happening. She was done. Lisa felt like she was falling, even though the plane was still cruising smoothly through the sky. She gripped the phone tighter. "Captain, I suggest you use the remainder of this flight to think carefully about what you're going to say," the captain cut in, his voice professional, detached. "Because Aiden Patel himself will be waiting for you, and I doubt he'll accept excuses." The line went dead. Lisa slowly lowered the phone, her breath coming in shallow bursts. This wasn't just about losing her job. This was about facing the person she had wronged. And for the first time, she wasn't sure what terrified her more. Being fired, or being forced to explain to Maya and Aiden Patel why she had done what she did, because she already knew. And now, she had to live with it. Lisa stared at the darkened screen of the in-flight phone, her mind blank, her body cold despite the warmth of the cabin. Security would be waiting. Aiden Patel would be waiting. Her career, the life she had built over a decade, was about to come crashing down the moment the wheels touched the runway. She had never been afraid of landing before. Now it felt like a countdown to her own execution. Her legs felt weak as she turned around, gripping the metal edges of the service counter for support. "Think, Lisa. Think." But there was no fixing this. No way to undo what she had done. Maya Patel hadn't caused a scene. She hadn't needed to. She had simply waited. Waited for the truth to catch up to Lisa. And now it had. Lisa let out a shaky breath, her chest tightening. Every second felt like a weight pressing down on her ribs. suffocating her. Her eyes flickered toward the business class cabin, where Maya sat, still calm, still composed, as if nothing had happened at all. Lisa clenched her jaw, the guilt hitting her in full force. She had treated this woman like an intruder in a place she had every right to be. And now Lisa was the one being forced to leave. The irony of it cut deeper than she was willing to admit. She squeezed her eyes shut. For years, she had justified her decisions as following protocol. But what if the protocol had never been the problem? What if the real issue was her? The moment that thought crossed her mind, her stomach twisted violently. She turned away, barely able to look at herself anymore. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into New York. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened, your tray tables are stowed, and your seats are in the upright position. Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Lisa's hands trembled as she reached for a safety checklist. It was routine, muscle memory. But this time, it felt meaningless. She had done this 1,000 times before. But now it felt like she was going through the motions of a job that no longer belonged to her. Her uniform, once a symbol of authority, felt like a costume, a mask she had worn for too long. Her stomach turned as she thought about what would happen when they landed. Security would be standing by the gate. Passengers would watch as she was led away like a criminal. She would be taken to an executive boardroom, a place she had never been before, never thought she would have to go. And Aiden Patel would be waiting for her to explain, waiting for her to justify the unjustifiable. She swallowed back the nausea rising in her throat. She had never been at the mercy of someone else's judgment before, but now she had no control over what happened next, and that terrified her. As she secured the galley and moved through the cabin for her final checks, she could feel the tension in the air. Passengers weren't staring anymore. Not outright, but their glances were quick, sharp, filled with silent judgment. They all knew. Lisa had spent years enforcing rules, making snap decisions, moving passengers around like they were pieces on a board. But now she was the one being moved. She reached Maya's row. The doctor was still sitting quietly, staring out the window, the golden glow of the setting sun reflecting off the glass. Lisa hesitated. Her throat felt tight, her heart pounding against her ribs. She should say something more than the forced apology from earlier. She should at least try to acknowledge what she had done. But how do you apologize for something that can't be undone? She opened her mouth, and then Maya turned and looked at her. Lisa froze. Maya didn't say anything. She didn't need to, because in her calm, steady gaze, Lisa saw everything: the silent disappointment, the understanding of exactly what had happened and why. The knowledge that this wasn't about one incident, that it had never been about a seat. Lisa felt her chest tighten, because she realized in that moment that Maya wasn't just waiting for the plane to land. She was waiting to see if Lisa would finally say something real, not an excuse, not a forced apology, but the truth. Lisa's hands curled into fists at her sides. The plane shuddered slightly as the landing gear deployed, the soft hum of descent filling the cabin. This was her last chance. One final moment before everything changed. Her mouth went dry. And then she finally spoke. "I was wrong." The words came out quieter than she expected. Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" Lisa swallowed, forcing herself to hold the other woman's gaze. "I was wrong," she repeated, her voice steady but heavy. "About you, about everything." Maya didn't respond right away. She just studied Lisa carefully, like she was waiting to see if she really meant it. Lisa took a slow breath. "I didn't even check the system," she admitted. "I assumed you didn't belong in business class. I saw your scrubs, I saw how tired you were, and I made a decision without even thinking. And I didn't question it, because I thought I was right." The words felt raw, like she had peeled away a part of herself and exposed something ugly underneath. Maya didn't react immediately, but then after a long moment, she nodded. Lisa didn't know what that meant. She didn't know if it changed anything, but somehow saying it out loud, really admitting it without excuses, without trying to protect herself, felt like the only thing she could do. She had spent years believing she was always right. And now, she finally understood that being right wasn't the same as being fair. The wheels touched the runway with a soft but firm thud. The descent was over. But for Lisa, the real reckoning was just beginning. The plane taxied down the runway, the familiar hum of the engines gradually softening as they approached the gate. Passengers shifted in their seats, stretching, reaching for their bags, preparing for the moment the seatbelt sign would turn off. For everyone else on this flight, the journey was coming to an end. For Lisa, hers was just beginning. Her hands trembled as she made her way back to the galley for the last time. She had done this routine 1,000 times before, smiling, thanking passengers, pretending that the weight of the flight never followed her beyond the cabin doors. But now she couldn't pretend, because outside this aircraft, in the terminal waiting for her, was the reality she had spent the last few hours trying to ignore. She had built her career around power, control, authority, and now she was walking straight into a room where she would have none of it. The intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. On behalf of the crew, we thank you for flying with us today. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign has been turned off." A soft ding followed. Instantly, the sounds of unbuckling seatbelts and overhead compartments opening filled the cabin. Passengers were already standing, retrieving bags, stretching stiff limbs. The usual chaos of arrival. But Lisa barely heard any of it, because standing just beyond the open cockpit door, she could see them. Security. 2 uniformed officers waiting near the jet bridge, their eyes scanning the cabin. Their posture was calm, unreadable, but Lisa knew they weren't here for a routine check. Her throat tightened. She forced herself to keep moving, her steps slow, deliberate. Her crew members gave her sidelong glances, none of them daring to speak. They all knew what was happening. They all knew that Lisa Dawson wasn't walking off this plane as a flight attendant today. Passengers filtered out of the rows, making their way toward the exit. Lisa's gaze flickered to Maya, who had yet to move from her seat. She sat with the same quiet composure she had held throughout the flight, her expression unreadable. Lisa hesitated. She thought about saying something else. But what more was there to say? Maya had already heard the truth, and whatever happened next was no longer in Lisa's hands. Maya stood retrieving her bag from the overhead bin with an ease that made Lisa feel even smaller. She was powerful without even trying, without ever raising her voice. Lisa had spent years demanding respect. Maya had commanded it effortlessly. As she stepped into the aisle, Maya finally turned to look at Lisa. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk, didn't seem satisfied by what was about to happen. Instead, she simply said, "I hope you learn from this." Then she walked past her, joining the flow of passengers exiting the aircraft. Lisa swallowed, her heart pounding. Would she? Would she learn? Would it even matter if she did? Because no amount of realization could erase what she had done. Minutes passed. The cabin was now empty, the last of the passengers gone. Lisa stood at the entrance of the aircraft, staring at the jet bridge like it was a cliff's edge. She had always walked off planes with purpose, her head high, her posture straight. Now, she could barely move. She took a breath and stepped forward. The moment she did, the security officer straightened. "Ms. Dawson?" one of them asked. Lisa nodded stiffly. "We need you to come with us." She expected it, but hearing it out loud still felt like a slap to the face. The officers didn't grab her. They didn't make a scene. But as she stepped into the terminal, she felt every pair of eyes on her. Passengers who had witnessed the incident, crew members from other flights, even ground staff, all of them watching as Lisa Dawson, once the most respected flight attendant on board, was now the one being escorted away. Her face burned. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she kept walking, forcing herself to breathe as they led her down the corridor, past baggage claim, past the boarding gates, until finally they turned a corner. And there, standing in front of a private executive lounge, waiting for her, was Aiden Patel. Lisa's pulse stopped. He stood tall, his hands in the pockets of his tailored suit, his expression unreadable. This was the man she had unknowingly wronged. The man who had single-handedly ended her career with a single phone call. And now she had to face him. She stepped forward, every instinct in her body screaming at her to shrink away. But she didn't, because she knew. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everything she had stood for. And in the end, maybe it was time she fell. The doors to the executive lounge opened. Lisa stepped inside, and the reckoning began. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in this situation? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss more stories like this.